I think what you've had is a cultural shift in the United States. Your generation wants to bring their children to games, their daughters to games, and they're going to want to coach their daughter, and you're going to see them coach them in soccer or basketball, whatever it is. So you're going to see more and more women playing sports. You're going to see more women wanting to sort of see other women play.
Welcome back to Portfolio Players, presented by E-Trade from Morgan Stanley. I'm Dan Roberts here at Front Office Sports in New York, and I've got Marc Lasry of Avenue Capital. Marc, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
So lots to talk about with you, and I don't know if you're at a point where you'd like to sort of move on from that period, but we got to start with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Sure.
I mean, you sold your stake 2 years ago now, but correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe this will change as you get into more things. I think people hear Marc Lasry and they still think Milwaukee Bucks. So with a couple of years hindsight now, having sold off the stake in the team, and you were there long enough to get a championship, great, you got the ring. How are you feeling about that decision, and how hard was it to walk away?
I think it was hard. I don't think it's ever easy. I think lifelong dreams are either to play in the NBA or, which that wasn't going to happen. So then it's to be able to own a team. I think that was a phenomenal accomplishment. I loved it. I had a great time. I think when I decided to sell, I thought it was probably the right time. I think I could have waited an extra year, or I could have done it a year earlier. I think for me, I wanted to focus on a few other things, and I thought it made sense.
How much was winning a title the impetus? Like, okay, now I've done it. Of course, you look over at the Celtics, and Wick is selling, and they just won a title, and was that like, okay, I achieved it, got the ring, now I can think about selling my stake?
I think a lot of it is you realize when you win a championship how hard it is, that it doesn't really make a difference how good you are. Not only do you have to be really good, you have to get really lucky. And you need to have everything fall into place. I think for us, that ended up happening. You couldn't have scripted it better. If you really think about it, we win. We beat the Nets, and we're down 2-0. I think we had lost the last game that we played them. I think we lost by 30 points, right? So certainly didn't feel good going back to Milwaukee. Then we win the next two. You lose, you win, and then you're playing them on their home court. And I remember at the time when Kevin Durant took the shot, I couldn't even watch. So I was sitting with my son, and I just looked at him, and I'm thinking, okay, if the fans scream, that means the ball went in. And if the fans go, oh, that means we won. And I hear everybody screaming, and I'm like, oh, shit, we lost. And then I turn and I look, and I'm realizing there's my son's telling me his foot was on line. And I'm like, oh, please, God. And then his foot was on line, so you go into overtime. The part that nobody really fully appreciates, we won overtime by 4-2. And that was really it. They scored the first basket. We then scored the next two, and then that was it.
Yeah.
Everybody was exhausted. Like a 5-minute overtime was 4-2. So, we then go to Atlanta. Giannis looks like he tore his leg, or his leg came off. I mean, if you remember the play.
Yeah.
And then he's out, but we still managed to win. And then we go down to Phoenix, and we're down again 0-2. And then we come back and win the next four. So it was a great ride. I think it's exactly what you said. Once you win a championship, you feel you've achieved the impossible. And then you sort of think, okay, how's the next year going to go? And then things just didn't work the next year.
Right. You capture lightning in a bottle just sometimes.
Yeah, and I think the Celtics will see that. I hope they win. I keep in touch with Drew Holiday quite a bit. And so the only thing I want is for him to win. He's a great guy. So I hope it works out for them. But it is really, really hard.
To what extent did you look down the barrel of the next 2 years in terms of player contracts? Now there's a lot of talk about what will happen with Giannis when his deal is up, and, think about having to deal with that.
That was a factor. I'm not going to tell you it wasn't. I thought it was going to cost a lot to keep the team. That was sort of one factor. I think the second is the team was getting older, and, would Giannis stay? And so I thought it was going to be hard to recapture everything and to do everything. So I sort of looked at it, now may be a good time. People will always pay a premium for someone who's a winner. It's harder when you're not winning. I think Wick found that out. If I said to you, look, somebody's going to pay you $6 billion for a team that doesn't own an arena and a team that is losing money because they're in luxury tax, you would have thought I was crazy. So I think there's a lot to the fact that people want to win a championship and will pay for that.
Because you brought up the Celtics and this reported $6 billion sale, I mean, a lot of discussion of whether the valuations can just keep going up in perpetuity. I mean, do you see that as like some kind of high bar, or it's only going to go up from here?
No, look, everybody talks about that, right? I think valuations won't go up. And the reason for that is, if you sort of think about it, you only make money three ways in sports: ticket sales, sponsorship, and then media. So no matter what happens, I don't think people reduce tickets. They reduce ticket pricing, right? I mean, you told me earlier you're a Celtics fan.
Yep.
All right. Sorry. Don't jump.
I'm kidding.
All right. But if you sort of think about that, ticket pricing went up, sponsorship goes up, your media goes up about 10, 15%. So I don't think you're going to have the growth that I had, where you could pay $1 and you got paid $8, 10 years later. What I do think, when I was looking at selling, I thought values would keep going up about 10, 15% a year. And I think that's actually what's going to continue happening. That's not a big jump. Where you get a little bit more is when it's a control piece,
right?
Where people want to control. I think you'll see that continuing to go up. It's hard. Like, it's not that it's just going to stop. It can level off. It can go up 5%, may go up 10. I don't think it'll be going up 20 or 30% a year.
You had a 25% stake in the team. As you said, about a decade, I guess 9 years. Was that how long you think you foresaw holding on to it? I mean, there was a time years and years ago where someone would buy a sports team and keep it in the family for 40 years. And there's still examples of this across the NFL, but we are starting to see a real shift. I mean, whether it's parceling out more stakes to private equity, bringing in more minority investment, more celebrities and athletes as faces of part ownership groups. But looking back on it, I mean, was that a short time, long time to hold on to a stake in the team?
I didn't really think about it. I mean, at the time I was just excited that we were able to buy. And I didn't know how long we would hold it. In the back of your mind, you're thinking it is a family asset. I would say the biggest problem for me was I didn't live in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of hard. I wanted to go to games. I flew in every night for a game. I'd fly back that same night. My son lived there. He loved it. He worked for the team. I think if we lived in Milwaukee as a family, I don't think we ever would have sold it.
Wow. I mean, along with the shift we're seeing, it's not always the case anymore, or maybe it's even more often not the case, that the owner has some kind of local ties. I mean, that was another thing, is a lot of these people who've owned it in the family, it's their home city.
It is.
But if you are lucky enough to have the means to buy either a whole team or a piece of a team anymore, you get whatever team you can get, right?
No, and that's exactly it. I think that's what happened. I think for us, when Milwaukee became available, I wanted to get involved. And I think for Wes and I, when we bought that, we thought, hey, that'll be a great asset. It'll be pretty unique. I think it would have been much harder if it was 3 or 4 hours away. The fact that you could go there that night and come back that night made owning the team much easier. It was about a 2 and a half flight. But it's hard. I mean, after you do that for 10 years, it's kind of tough.
Well, great. Let's kind of talk about the rest of the portfolio here, right? I mean, the Bucks was the past. Let's talk about the present. You've got your Avenue Sports Fund, which is somewhere in the ballpark of $1 billion raised, trying to spread it across different sports. There were a lot of media reports that you wanted to buy an NWSL team. Mm-hmm. And at some point, it was either going to be Angel City. Of course, Bob Iger will obey about that one. Then we were talking about getting a different team, the Courage. Where does that stand? And, what's the excitement for you right now around whether just NWSL, of course, as a league, and then, of course, we're seeing a huge boom in women's sports writ large?
So we were the cover bid in Angel City. So we did try to buy that. I don't know why Bob Iger got involved at the end, but he did. He's a great guy. I think him and his wife, Willow, I think it was a great investment for them. And they're great individuals. So I think it'll be super positive. I think the Courage we tried to buy. I think one of the issues was the fact that the league ultimately at the end sort of decided it was hard. They wanted individual owners as opposed to funds. And I got that. And, we're still trying to figure out if there's a way we can do it. But I'm a big believer in women's sports. It's exactly what you said. What you're seeing is there's just more and more interest in it. Part of that, so you were telling me earlier, you have a girl or a boy?
A girl.
Right.
Yeah.
So think about this. For me, when I went to games with my dad, it was just my father and I. He never brought my sister. Not because he didn't want to. You just didn't think about it, right? And today, the idea that you wouldn't bring your daughter to a game is inconceivable.
Right.
Right? It's not like you wouldn't even remotely go, oh, no, sweetie, it's not for you.
We took her to a Liberty game already.
Yeah. Okay.
She's only 2.
All right,
She's been
there you go.
to a Liberty game. Yeah.
So I think what you've had is a cultural shift in the United States. And I don't think people fully appreciate that. So this cultural shift is that your generation wants to bring their children to games, their daughters to games. And they're going to want to coach their daughter. And you're going to see them coach them in soccer or basketball, whatever it is. So you're going to see more and more women playing sports. You're going to see more women wanting to sort of see other women play. And let's be honest, when you went to the Liberty game, it wasn't just women at the Liberty game. Right? So that's what I think is interesting. And I think you've sort of seen that shift where for women's sports, men will go and watch, women will go and watch. And I think that's why you've seen this growth in women's sports. And that's sort of why for us, we're big believers in it.
When you look at the NWSL specifically, I think some people find it hard to reconcile either the purchase prices or then the resulting valuations for a league that is both so young and, of course, these teams don't make money yet. Now, you could say the same about much of MLS, Major League Soccer. People look at those prices and they just kind of wonder, like, $250 million for an NWSL team or that valuation. And is that all just about a bet on the future?
I think a lot of it is a bet on the future. When you look at teams, so here's the problem with owning a team. Teams trade at a multiple of revenue, right? They don't really trade at a multiple of how much they make. And the reason for that is really simple. So when I bought the Bucks, my focus, I thought, was going to be how can we make more money? So,
and win.
No, it was really in the beginning was how do you make more money? And you thought the winning would come. You didn't really think you're not going to win. The problem is you quickly realize, if I want to win, I've got to spend money. So like the Celtics just got bought. You as a fan, do you say to yourself, well, look, hey, for the new owners, I really want you guys to make money. So don't worry. And you don't have to spend money on the team. Does that even come into your thought process? Not even close. Your thought process is spend.
Yep.
And what you're seeing is if you want to make money in any league, whether it's soccer or whether it's basketball, you actually have, it's hard to do that and win. It just is. It's very, very difficult. I think if you want to win, you're going to spend. And by spending, hopefully you win, and then the value of your franchise keeps going up. So I think in the beginning for NWSL and for any of the new leagues, you've got to spend, and because you've got to get a practice facility, you've got to do all the different things. You're growing, and you're building for the future, and you're trying to increase your revenue because people will pay you based on that.
And of course, you ask what fans want to see. It's also, hold on to my favorite player.
Yes.
Let's talk about some of the other investments in the portfolio and keeping with these sort of upstart leagues, if you will. We talked about NWSL. TGL is a really interesting model, this Tiger and Rory golf league. It's a simulator. We wrote about the debut and kind of split opinions among golf fans. I think a lot of people think it's very cool and interesting. I think a lot of others turn it on, they're like, wait a minute, it's a simulator. How did that come about? What were your thoughts there on why this makes sense?
So a lot of it was what I would tell you networks want. Like, networks want more sports. Right? And the reason they want more sports is just really simple. It's actually one of the few things where there's a live audience.
The only thing increasingly left.
Yeah, because people, like, I love Landman or I love like all these different shows, but I can watch it whenever I want. And by the way, there's no commercial, right? I don't think I've watched regular TV other than the news. So you actually don't watch anything that's got commercials.
Right.
The only thing you do is watch sort of an NBA game or, a football game, whatever.
I'd say that and awards shows, by the way. That's it.
I'll give you that.
If you want to watch the Oscars.
Right. But it's actually pretty minimal now what's happened. We went from having 3 channels when I was a kid to having cable and having 500 channels to now you're just watching what you want. Right?
Apps. Yeah.
So I think when you sort of look at all that today, for me, what I want to end up doing is sort of taking advantage of that. And so TGL was exactly that. And the reason it was exactly that is because what networks want is they want to be able to show golf, which is probably the highest demographic. And they want to be able to show that and say, oh, hey, we've got it for 2 hours straight. So we all saw the Masters, right? You loved it. Mm-hmm. It was a great finish. But for the networks, it was great, but it just went on. And you ended up having the playoffs, and that was great. But what all the networks wanted, especially ESPN, was something on 2 hours. So that's how the whole idea started. It was really Tiger and Rory's idea. Can we do this in 2 hours? And the only way you could do it was actually play 15 holes, do a simulator. And I think they came up with a great idea. And so when we looked at that, we thought, well, look, if all you get a normal, I think PGA event's about 2.5 million viewers. So I think it was based on about 250,000 viewers. And when we looked at it and a lot of the work we did, we came to the conclusion you'd at least get 250,000. So ESPN would be happy, and I think the league would be happy. And the idea was you did sort of a 3-year deal, and that if things worked out, you would have a new media deal based on the fact that more people were watching.
Yep.
And if things didn't work out, it was fine. Like, at least ESPN got a fair deal. I think in the first season, it's actually worked out far better than we thought.
Almost 1 million for
it's exactly
the highest rated one, yeah.
It's 1 million viewers. So it's about 4 times what people thought it was going to be, which is fabulous. And I think by the end, I actually believe people started loving TGL, because the thesis behind it was the players were going to be interacting and people want to know personalities. I think at the beginning, the players were very respectful of the game and trying not to make jokes.
Yeah.
And I think by the end, they just didn't care anymore.
Totally.
Right. And they became who they were, which is actually what we all thought it would be. I remember one of the matches I went to one of the players, they were just practicing putting, and who wasn't on our team. And I looked down and I'm like, hope you choke that. He's like, who are you? Why are you out here? You're not supposed to be here. Call security. And a couple of our players that said, no, yells the team. But part of what I wanted to do is get our guys trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you started seeing that towards the end, that people were having a good time.
Yeah, 100%. It's personality driven. It's a new format.
It is.
And in many ways, if we go on to another one of your investments, Unrivaled.
Yes.
Same kind of theme here, where,
Yes.
It's 3-on-3. It's something new and exciting. Unclear, no guarantee it'll work long term, but certainly a lot of attention in year one. And we've had the chance to interview the commissioner of Unrivaled and some of the players on how year one went. Almost made a profit. It came very close to being profitable. Talk about getting into Unrivaled.
I think, again, it was the same theme that we want to be in women's sports. I thought it was a unique idea, and I thought that people would warm to the idea. And I thought Alex, actually, who came up with the idea, I thought he did a great job. And he's a great salesperson or spokesperson for the league. And I think people liked it, right? And it's different, and it's new. Look, here's what's interesting. Nobody knows what somebody's going to like, right? That's what's really hard. And what I mean by that is the ratings will always tell you what people want to watch, right? Prior to, I think like 3 years ago, the WNBA, the ratings were like 250,000 viewers. Nobody really thought of it. Now it's close to 1 million. Why is that? Because more people want to watch it, right? So we all hope that when you sort of invest or do something, you're going to have more people watching. We like to invest based on the fact that we've seen that you've had growth Unrivaled was new, so you didn't have that.
Right.
But because of that, you were able to come in at a much lower valuation.
There's also something happening here in terms of finite seasons. Or, you talked about TGL. We know that it's only going to take 2 hours. It's sort of regimented in that way. Unrivaled, it's only going to last a few weeks. It's almost like a capsule format. And I think what we might be seeing is eventually new things need to not have these long, drawn-out seasons. I mean, if I'm MLB and NBA, eventually, God forbid, dare we say, because it's so pristine, don't ruin it. But now that you're doing pitch clock and trying to shorten the games, at what point do they shorten the whole season?
It's a great point. It is, I think, one of the reasons the NFL has done so well is because there's one game a week.
That's it. Scarcity.
Right. And people know, like, if you lose that game, it's a big deal. I think in baseball, it's hard. You got 162, right? Basketball, you've got 82. I think the hard part is keeping people interested during the regular season.
Yep.
Right?
NHL dealing with this too.
And I think it's hard. I think when I was a kid, I used to follow the sports pages and you check on the games, and I think there was just less to do, right? You ended up living for every game. Today, I think it's just different. It just is. We're just really busy. And the problem is we're all doing different things. I never could have imagined 20 years ago that you'd have a phone. I mean, I used to carry this satellite phone, right?
Card phone.
Yeah, and remember we had the card phones, you had all this stuff. And the idea that today you have a phone, and I'm sure you see it as well, you'll see your daily usage.
Oh, don't look.
Right.
Can't look at that.
Okay, but if somebody had told you 20 years ago when you're graduating from high school, oh, by the way, you're going to be on your phone 8 hours a day, you'd say, what are you talking about? That's impossible. I mean, you go to anywhere you go, people will be in a room and everybody's on their phone as opposed to talking to each other. I think because of that, it feels like there's too many games, right? People would rather sort of focus on one thing a week or two things a week. That's why football, in my opinion, has gotten even more popular, right? I think 95 of the 100 highest rated TV shows last year were NFL games.
Yeah, it was down to 70, but that still dwarfs everything else.
Okay.
It was 90 like maybe 4 years ago.
Okay.
It's down to like 70. It's still the best thing running on live TV.
Right.
Have you wanted to get into the NFL? I mean, it's the ultimate.
I think we will ultimately invest in the NFL. I think we'll find a pretty good investment, but we have time.
Yeah, it's funny when you talk about attention spans too. I mean, I think all of the leagues are going to have to reconcile with the very way that they measure metrics.
Yes.
I mean, the NBA now more and more, and some people make fun a little bit, is they put out the numbers, but then they say, but look also at the engagement on social. You've got to include our numbers on social. Right. And on one hand, it looks a little bit like the ratings are dipping, so now you're bringing in Twitter views. But on the other hand, this is really happening. There are people who, if you only measure people who sit down and watch the game, you're not including a huge subset of fans who just watch all the highlight clips on Twitter.
Right. Totally agree. Like, I love watching a game from beginning to end, but I would tell my kids, don't.
They're not going to. Yeah.
They don't. In fact, they've got 4 games going on. They're on their iPad. They're watching this. They're talking. It's totally different. You and I don't know how you used to watch games, but I would just invite people over and we'd watch a game.
Yeah.
But you'd watch it from beginning to end. That's not the way it is anymore.
Yeah, 100%. What have we not talked about that's in your sports portfolio, or what's something you're not in and you're really keeping an eye on?
I think we're looking at youth sports quite a bit. I think that's a huge opportunity set, mainly because of just how involved parents are these days. For me, it was my dad would drop me off and then he'd come back and pick me up.
Right, goodbye.
Yeah, 5 hours later. And most of the time you just waited. Right? Today, it's not even close. And so I think that passion that parents have for their kids playing sports, they will pay anything for that. And so what you're seeing is quite a bit of growth in the youth sports business.
You said something recently I thought was pretty fair about the economic uncertainty right now, the uncertainty under Trump and not being sustainable. How does that impact both the decisions you're making, the investment we'll see? Because in some ways, and there was even a recent bank note that said as much, the investment flooding into sports, I don't want to say it's completely immune, but it's an area where, the people who have the money to put into sports are not going to pull back just because of, the stock market.
No, I agree with that, but I think it's whenever there's uncertainty, it's a roulette. There's no industry that doesn't have uncertainty, and I think in sports you feel more comfortable because it's not something that's what are you worried about in the next week and next month. It's definitely a 5 to 10 year deal that you're looking at. But I think people, whenever you've got to spend money in an uncertain environment, you're more careful. Or you're more focused on it. So I sort of see that. I think even in sports, things are they're going a little slower. People are taking a little longer to make a decision. Because, look, nobody wants to lose money. Maybe in your model, you said, okay, it was going to take 2 years to turn a profit. Now, if it takes 3 years or 4 years, you've got to look at things a little differently.
The other thing happening under President Trump, another term is this is the most sports aware, sports talking, sports fan president. I mean, owning a number of golf courses, he currently spends a lot of his time going to sports events, from wrestling to college football.
Yeah.
What do you make of that phenomenon?
I actually think that's positive for sports. I think when the person who's the highest elected official in your country is a sports nut, I think that's positive. There's nothing negative about it. So I think the fact that he's gone to football games, he goes to games, it's great. I think he went to a NASCAR event and he's done a bunch of events. I think it's all positive.
Let's talk about investments beyond just sports. What are you into? It's funny when we talk about the athletes getting into investing, and I know Steph Curry is in Avenue Capital. I mean, a lot of these guys, the first place they gravitate is tech investing. But what are you watching in that area, and what are you into?
So it's not for us. I mean, mainly what we do is we do specialty lending. So
no venture?
No. The vast majority of our business is us just lending money to companies and sort of just making a spread. So we try to make 12, 15%. We're very happy making that return. Our investors are. So that's the vast majority of what we do.
I mentioned Steph Curry. I want to make sure I ask about, the various athletes who get into these funds and who are in your orbit. And, in some cases, especially lately, the newest, biggest thing for athletes, whether still playing or recently retired athletes, buy a piece of a team. It seems like any team. But in many cases, of course, they're just putting in a very small investment. And what the group or the team gets is now we have this pro athlete or celebrity who's the face of it. But then it seems to me there's a different level, like your Steph Currys, your Andre Iguodala's, Serena, these athletes who they really are putting in real money and they're actually involved in the team ownership group. They're not just a face.
Yeah, and I think part of that, for us, it's there's Steph, there's Michael Strahan. He actually runs our athlete board. We've got Harry Kane. You've got Lindsey Vonn, who I think she's fabulous. I mean, when you think about it, I think she's won like 85 world titles. It's hard, by the way. It's to do win one. 85 seems to be like an accomplishment. Lauren Holiday, she's won a couple of Olympic gold medals. Candace Parker, she's won a bunch of WNBA championships. They're very involved. They help us in what we're doing. The goal in what we do is to win a tie, right? And what I mean by that is when you're trying to buy something, auctions are horrible because all an auction is who's got the highest price. Really what you want to do is you want somebody, they want to be partners with you. And I think all of our athletes have helped in making sure that in anything we're bidding on, that we can win the tie. And that's actually been a huge, huge edge for us because there's a difference between me calling you up and Steph calling somebody or Michael calling somebody or Harry, especially in Europe, or Lindsay, Lauren, or Candace giving you a call. It's kind of funny. You sort of see it a lot. And what I mean by that is you'll always, when if Michael's calling somebody when we're together, you sort of hear, who's calling?
Right.
Then they, okay, I'll be right there.
Yeah, you're going to take that call.
I'm going to take the call. That's exactly it. You got it.
Yeah. Wow, just trying to win a tie. That's I like that. Sounds very attainable.
It is, actually. The goal is to win the ties. That's what you want to do.
Good stuff. Marc, thanks for talking to me.
Thank you very much.
Really good conversation.
My pleasure.